Welcome back. If today is your first time of visiting my YouTube channel, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button down below so that you get the latest updates. Alright, today we'll be talking about some of this basic and some of the most important, well I say most important, all CSS properties are important depending on what you want to do. So I'll just say some of the important CSS properties we'll be talking about, which is the width, height, padding margin, color font size, font family, letter spacing, box shadow, border radius, line height, and display, right? So we'll be using the CSS property to build a simple card. And this card, I was just skimming through one of a good UI UX designer called Ashil Designer. You can go check it out on Instagram. He designed a very cool mobile application here. So I'll just be taking part of the mobile applications, and that is what we'll be designing, right? Which is this. I decided to settle with this. So we'll not be designing everything. We'll just take part of this, which is this guy. We'll just need to create a card. So I've already searched for the image. If you want to look for the image, you can go to pixels. I guess it's pixels. Yeah, seems like I got it from pixels. And you can search for trees or flower. No, let's do flower. That looks like a flower, right? Alright, if you do flower, you can check if you can see the flower. If you can't find it, you can probably, I think it's this place I got the flower, or on Splash. Let me check on Splash. I guess it's on Splash. So let's do flower here. Well, you can just search and take any of the images you feel comfortable, right? But I have my own images. I'll probably send the link. I'll put the link down below in the description. So let's go back to, let's not waste much time, and let's go back. So we're talking about the width, height, padding margin, just like I explained. Alright, and this is what we'll be replicating, just this part, to create like a simple card. So let's start by laying out our HTML. And laying out your HTML have a lot influence on how you end up writing your CSS, because the way you lay out your HTML will make your CSS writing much more easier and much more simpler for you to write. So let's move down to laying out our HTML. So I'll put this here, go to our text editor, and the first thing I'll be using div, right? Div is a block level element, and it's not like a semantic kind of HTML element. Will I just say probably like a representational kind of HTML element, right? So I'll say div, and this div I'll give it the class. We already talked about class in our previous video. If you've not watched the video, you can click
10 o'clock.
the link at the top right corner and for you to go and watch the video. So I will give it container because it's the guy that will be wrapping every other items inside the card, right? So the next thing we need to do, coming back to our design, is this guy, right? This image. So we want to create this image. So that's the next container we're going to create. So I like boxing things, right? Like creating different box for different items and like grouping. So if you look at the design, it looks kind of grouped, right? The image is separate from the text, which are the details. So that's what I'll use, that pattern, right? So I will say another div, right? I'm gonna come here and say give it the class of, let's say, since it's a flower, so I'll call it flower box, which will house the flower. Then in between we'll have our image, the guy that will hold the flower, right? So add alt text, yeah, and we'll end. Then the next part is the text content, which are the details, right? So I'll put it in another container called div, and I'll give it the class called details, right? So in these details, we have like a title here, which is the name of the flower, philodendron, right? So I'll give it heading. Let's me not go with heading 3, right? So I'll do heading 3, which is this guy is an HTML element. We have heading 1 to 6. So I'll do philodendron, right? So the next thing is the text description down below, which is I'll use paragraph for that. So I'll just put P here, which is paragraph, and it says philodendron is a large genus of flowering plants in the family of Araceae or Araceae. Can't pronounce that word. If you can, please drop me a link down below. So I will say philodendron is a large flowering plants in the family of Araceae. Is That's the word, right? Is a large genus of flowering. Okay, is a large genus of flowering plants. All right, save. So let's come back to our browser and see what we have here. The reason why you're not seeing the image is because we've not added the image. So we can go ahead to add the image. But before we do that, there's one thing I want us to do first, which is setting our font, right? So that we can be able to see how beautiful it will end up looking. So that I will advise anybody while you're doing your UI, your design, right? When you're designing your HTML and CSS, using your HTML and CSS, if you know you're not using the default font family that is already here, you want to add your own kind of font. I will always advise you to do that first, so that you'll be able to see the representation of how your font, your heading and your paragraph will look like, right? And you can be able to now start defining the size for the heading one and body text, right? So that's what I will do first. So for us to add the font, if you look at the design, the font look closely to like Lato. I really don't know the font that was used here, so I'll use Lato for that. So I'll go to my Google and search. You can use Google Font, right, to add it. So I'll show you how to use Google Font. Later in another video, I will show you how you can add your local font. So going to Google, this is what we have. And what I want in the font, I want the regular font, which is this guy. So I will select it. I also want the bolded font, which is this guy. So I will select it. So we have two different kind of font, right? These are the two font sizes we will be using. All right. So for me to be able to link this, I just need to come in. You see link here. I'll take this code and put it at the head section of my HTML, and voila, we'll have that linked already. So, it seems like I've already done something like that. So let me just remove it, right? And go back here, do this, save it, go to my page, reload. Okay, let's see why the font is not taking effect. All right, the reason why the font is not taking effect because we've not asked him to use the font. All right, so what we need to do now, in between our head section and in between your style tag, you now come to this place and define the font family that will be for all, right? I'll just put it in the body because the body wraps every other HTML element. So I'll say font family, that's like the first CSS property we're using from the list we have there. So font family, I will say use Lato, right? Lato is the name, so immediately I changed it. As you can see, it's already looking Latocious, if there's any word like that. All right, so the next thing you need to do is for you to define your base font size. Your base font size is the font size that all your HTML elements will inherit from, right? But you can still change it depending on what you want on your font size. You can change it in a different location you want, right? So I'll just set a base font size. I'll do font size. So I'll do 1 rems, right? I'll maybe in another video I'll explain why I'm using rems, why I'm using why you should use rems and why you should use other CSS properties. The reason why I'm using rems here is because it's kind of relative, right? If I want me to change all my fonts, I just need to come here and adjust it, right? And it will affect all the area of my font where I'm using rems, right? Which they are relative to this font size in the body of our HTML page. So I will explain that in another video, but for now we're using 1 rems, right? So then now let's move. As you can see, it's already looking close to what we want. So let's go and style the text, right? Which is this guy. So this guy is looking a little bolder, so I'll go and give it maybe a font size of 700, which is what we added. Then I will now add color to this guy, which is close to like a gray. Right? I will not use all the text. I'm just using just the first sentence out there. So I'll come back here and say, okay, the details section is the one that is responsible for our text. So I'll take this class, I'll say put it here, and there is what we call descendant selector. Descendant selector is a way you can be able to select a child item inside a container. So this div here is the one housing the H3 and P tag, right? That is what you end up using as your descendant selector. So you can be able to like select this div and select this H1 item. So let's go forward and say H1 item. That's the way, H3, right? Rather, that's the way you write a descendant selector. You put the parent class or the parent element, then the next one will be the child element, right? Any H3 element that is inside the div that is having a class of details will be affected. But for now, we only have one div, one H3. So I'll give it will I say font size? Do I want to increase the font size? So let me increase the font size a little bit. So I'll say font size, I'll do 1.2 rem. Let me make it 1.3. It's kind of big, so let me take it back to 1.2. All right, 1.2. Then I want to do this. The font is kind of jump packed to each other. I want to create a little spacing in between each character of the letter, the title of the flower called philodendron, right? So I'll do letter spacing is responsible for that. So you can set the space in between each character, letter spacing, right? All right, and I'll go. Let me start with 2 pixels and see. 2 pixels is too much. I'll do 1 pixel. Yeah, 1 pixel is looking cool. So that is what I want to do. So the next thing, if you look at this design, let me inspect it so that you get to see it. All right, there is a default. By default, your browser apply a default style to your H1 and paragraph. As you can see, we are having a padding top, margin top, and margin bottom. Same thing to your paragraph. These are block level elements, so that's what your browser will apply. That's the reason why your browser is applying this default CSS to them. All right, so but we don't want the space to be this much in between the title and the description, just like we have here. So we'll probably reduce the margin top so that we'll have something cooler. All right, so the next thing I'll do, since this guy is the guy, so I'll just reduce the margin bottom. So don't forget, there's something that is happening here. So as you can see, as you see here, and as you see here, there's a collapsing margin top at the top. This guy and this guy, because this guy is having a margin top of, let's say, 19.2 pixel, right, and a margin bottom of 19.2 pixel. This guy is also having 16 pixel, right? 16 plus 19 is around 25.2, right? 25.2 pixel will be greater than this space that we are seeing here. So what is happening here is that the two margin is collapsing each other. So the one with the highest value will take effect, which is this guy, which is 19.2 pixel. You get? That is the reason why this guy is not pushing further away from this guy. Don't worry, I'll get to explain those things better. All right. So let me move forward to, like, say, okay, the next thing we want to do is reduce margin bottom, right? So we'll do that for both the text title and the description. So we want to reduce margin bottom to 0 pixel. Then for the as you can see, it has moved a little bit. So let me take it out. You notice this guy, see, is moving, right? Because the highest margin, a margin collapsing, the highest margin will take effect, while other margin will just be used to turn to be like 0, right? It's not taking effect. So immediately I apply this margin 0, automatically the 16 pixel is now kicking in. So now we'll now go ahead to, like, say, 16 pixel, which is our guy, using our descendant selector. We want to reduce the margin top this time to, like, say, 5 pixel. As see, it has moved up a little bit, right? Let's just go with 8 pixel, right? 8 pixel is looking cool. So now we want to change the color of this text. So this is the place where we use the color property. Let's try light gray and see. Light gray is too faint, so probably just set our mouse here and make it darker. Then just come here and scroll it down a little bit and release it, and it will reload. Alright, this is better. Alright, that is what we want to do. And secondly, as we go forward, we'll add other CSS properties. So the next thing I want to do is to add our image now, because we are already making our text looking cool, right? We already made our text to look good. So the next thing we want to do is to add our image. We already added the image to this directory, which is this flower. That is what I'll be using. So I'll go ahead to select the flower. So if you have your image, you can do the same and add the image. Now immediately I add the image, you notice that it pushes every other content down below, and it's taking like a max height and max width, right? Because that's the size of the image, that's the original size of the image, and it's making our page to be scrollable horizontal and vertical, right? We only want a vertical scroll, but we don't want a horizontal scroll when you're doing your design. When I want this card, that's the way I want the card to look, right? I don't want the image to be this big. So the first thing you need to do for image resetting is for you to come here and apply. I'll put it above this guy because that's the way I'm doing my own resetting. So all the reset style will be on top. while every other style that I'm adding will be beneath it. Alright, so I'll go to image and set the image to width of 100%, and I will tell you reason why I'm doing that. So setting the width of 100% will remove the horizontal scroll for us. As you can see, there's no more horizontal scroll. Now it will take 100% of its weight container, which is whatever container you find itself, you try to take 100%, and 100% of the container is 100% of the window, and that's the reason why you're saying that there is no more horizontal scroll. So the next reset we need to apply. Image are inline elements, and for you to be able to style your image very well while in a container, it's always advisable to make the image to be a block level element. And how do you do that? You apply display block to it, and later in another video I will explain why I'm applying display block to it. There is a caveat around this, and they also rather we like to say there's a problem around inline image while you're trying to box it, and I will explain that in another video. Alright, so that is what we want to do. And looking at this image is larger than what we have here. We want to reduce the size. We want to give it like a minimum. We want to set a height for it, right? So that we have the same height of the container, and we also want the image to wrap inside that container. We want the container to wrap the image, and we'll apply all this curvy edge. Then you get to see that. Alright, so let's go back to our code and apply that. So we're not applying it to the image, we're applying it to the container, because the container of the image is the guy that wraps the image. So we'll come here and say flower box, right? We'll now come here, we'll put it at the top here because it's at the top level. Put here and say we want the flower box. The flower box is already taking 100% of its container, and the reason why you're seeing that is larger than what we expect to have is because currently the image is having the full width of the container. So we'll probably now want to reduce the width of the container. So we'll go back to our container and apply a new width, right? So we'll come here and pick our container. Don't worry, we'll come back to the flower box. Take our container and we say we want to give the width of our container to be 200 pixels, right? Because we don't want it to be that wide. So 200 pixels, that's what we have currently, and as you can see, our image has now reduced in size. Alright. Now, the next thing we're going to do, since we already added this, I like having to see where my box is and where every other item, right? So there's a guideline that you end up using, right? Let me show you how to use that guideline. I always use that when I'm designing so that I can be able to tell where each item is or are, so that I can be able to like move it to where I want it to be. So the first thing I will do, I will apply a guide to this container so that you can be able to know that is the one boxing every other item. So I'll use outline for this. The reason why I'm using outline is because outline will not add any pixel to the design, right? Outline is just there. It's not adding any pixel, just like border. If you want to use border, don't forget that if you're doing a pixel design perfect, pixel perfect design, the border will end up adding to the height and the width of that particular container. So that's the reason why I'm using outline, right? This is our outline, and our outline is looking dope. It's the guy wrapping both the image, container, and the text, and this is how we want it to be. Now, if you look at the design, there's a space between the image and the text, right? This space, right? Just like I explained in the previous video, that padding is what in our box model video. You can click the link up below if you've not watched the video. Is that we explain what padding is. We say padding is the guy that creates space in between the content of an item, of a box, and the box itself, right? So this guy is our container, is the box, while we have image and text, which is the items inside. So we want to create space in between them, so we apply padding to the container. So let me apply padding here. So I'll do padding of, let's say 10 pixels, and see how it will look. Alright, 10 pixels looking cool, but let's make it 20 pixels. Alright, it's now looking close, right? Just like our design. This is how small we want our card to be. You can decide to increase it if you want to, it's up to you, but I just want this card to look this small. So coming back to this guy, we already created something close. If this width is not what you want, you can probably add your own width. So let's come back. This is it. So now we want to make this our card stand out, right? As you can see, the difference between the card container and this box is not that obvious. So there's a CSS property to create like a shadow around the box, which is called box shadow, right? So I will show you how to use box shadow. So I want to apply box shadow to the container. So I'll apply box shadow, and box shadow takes like 4 or 5 properties, right? I will explain. The first one is the vertical axis. So whatever you put here as a value, so you start from 0, right? You can also have minus value. You can add a negative value. But from 0, if you increase the value, it moves the shadow to the right hand side. If you reduce the value or take it to minus sign, it moves it to the left hand side. So that's the first value. So I'm setting my own to be 0. The second one is the vertical, right? So I want the shadow to move a little bit down below the card. So that's the reason why I'll be applying a value to this guy. So I'll say probably let me do 10 pixel, right? 10 pixel beneath it. Don't worry, you get to see the shadow. We are getting there. So the next one is the blur effect. The blur effect is what will like blur the color that you end up applying to form the shadow, right? You don't want a thick color. You don't want a color with a solid value, right? So that is the reason why we are applying blur. So I'll set a blur of 40 pixel. So the LAX, as you can see, is already taking effect. So it's taking black as a default color. That's the reason why you're seeing the blur looking this way. But don't worry, we work on that, and you get to see that this effect will look cool. But let's take this blur to 0, right? If we take the blur to 0, you understand that the blur value, the color is not actually taking effect beneath, because we already asked the vertical axis to move the shadow down below the container, right? That's the reason why you're seeing that solid color down below. And the reason why, and because our blur effect is 0. So let's take our blur effect back to 40, and it will look superb, right? All right, the next thing we want to do, we want to control how thick or how intense our blur at the color is at the background. So that's where you now apply your color RGB. So if you don't want this default color to be red, you can change it to whatever you want. So R stands for red, G stands for green, B stands for blue, while A is the opacity, which is the intensity of the color, right? So I will explain. 0, 0, 0. This is like an hexadecimal value of black, right? So the last value is the opacity. So I want to reduce the opacity to like 12%. You can use percent, or you can use just ordinary value. So if you are using ordinary value, know that the highest opacity is 1, which will give you a thick color, right? So I don't want to use a thick color, I want to reduce it. So if you're using normal value, you can do 0 point something, right? So it's between 0 to 1. So 0.9 or 0.8, depending on how you want your opacity to look like. But I'm using percentage, so I'll do 12% of the opacity. And it's already looking dope already. Don't worry, I'll take out the outline so that we'll get to see it now, because we already have our box shadow, and it will make it look cool, and we can be able to differentiate the box from the item. As you can see, it's looking cool. Now the next thing we want to do, we want to add a curvy edge around this particular box that we're seeing. What is the CSS property responsible for that? It's called border radius. Border radius is the guy that is responsible for you to apply any effect you want to apply to the border. But border radius affects how curvy the edge of that border will look like, right? So I'm applying border radius to the container. So I'll say border radius. Let's start with value. Let's say, let me do 15 pixel, right? Depending on what you want, you can change it to fit your needs. All right, 15 pixels is already looking cool, but let me do 20 and see, right? 20 is also dope, so I'll go with 20. You can use whatever you want to use, right? All right, so let's go ahead. Border radius, that is how it works. Border radius, the reason why I'm using 4 value and 1 value here is the shorthand. You can actually use 4. The 4 stands for your top left, top right, bottom right and bottom left. Those are the angles, right? Those are the edge of that box. Those are the edge of the box. All right, but you can do 2020. So you can do 20 pixel, 20 pixel, 20 pixel. But this is repeating all the values. So that's the reason why I'm going with just 1 value. All right, and if you want to have like different edge, different sizes, value for different angle, you can come and do that by reducing the value, and you notice that that particular edge is now having a little curve. So you can do whatever you want, but I'm going with 20 pixel and I'm using shorthand method. All right, the next thing we need to do, since we already make this guy, is to make our image to have like a height. As you can see, this guy is having a height and is making it to look nice. So we want to give the image container, because it's the guy wrapping our image, we want to give it an height. So I'll do, let me do 130 and see how it will look like. All right, this is a problem, right? As you can see, the height of the container. So let me apply outline to the container. I'll do 1 pixel solid. I know many people must have encountered this issue, right, while writing, trying to box an image, right? I understand. Now, what is actually happening is that this image height is greater than the container that we are putting it. For us to box this image, we have to apply, since we're working with the height, so we have to apply height to the image to, like, say, give it like 100%, so that it will take 100% of whatever container it finds itself. So we'll come back to our image and apply height of let's say 100%. All right, and as you can see now, our image is now respecting itself. It's staying, but the image is kind of shrinked, right, and it's looking somehow, which is not what you want to do. So there's another CSS property called object fit. Object fit is the guy that I will apply to my image to make it look nice. So they have different value. We have object cover, we have contain, we have a lot of value around object fix. I don't know why this two tips keeps showing. Alright, as you can see, but the one I'm using, because I want it to cover the full container, right? Whatever area you're giving to it. So I will take cover. You can try the others and see how it works, right? So I'm taking cover, and cover is already making our image look cool. So, but there's another thing we need to do is, you see the image head is looking round. Who will tell me what CSS property are we going to use? I'll give you a second to say that. All right, box border radius, you are correct. So let's go back to use border radius. So we apply border radius to the container, but not to the image. You get? So we apply border radius to the container. So border radius, I'll go with 15 pixel, right? Let's see how it looks. Our image is not having a curvy edge. Why? All right, there's something you need to apply to this for it to work the way you want it to work. I don't know why this guy is not formatting properly. Let me just format it this way. All right, good. So the CSS property is called, the reason why it's happening like this is because the image is overflowing above the edge. So at that point in time, it's creating a sharp edge, like it's taking the real container edge. So we don't want the image to flow. So there's a CSS property called overflow hidden, meaning we want to hide whatever item that will flow out of this container. And the flex box is the container, so that's where we're going to apply the overflow hidden. So overflow hidden will now hide that edge for us. Right, for us to be able to see how curvy it is, let's take out this guy. As you can see, it's looking curvy, right? That is what I want to have, so I will leave it that way. All right, now our card is already looking dope. So the next thing we want to do, the text, the description is a little, the line height between each line of the text is kind of small. I want to increase the line height. That's where we come and use our line height property. So we'll go to the text, which is this guy, and give it the line height, so that we can be able to like increase it. All right, you can use pixel or you can use the direct value. If you're using the direct value, you can just put whatever you want. So I'm using 1.3 by using direct value. Let's see how, as you can see, the height of the text is increasing. So let me exaggerate it to 1.9 so that you get to see it better. As you see, it's wider, but that's not what we want. We want something close to like 1.4 or 1.5. Let's do 1.5. All right, 1.5 is looking awesome already. So we've used all the CSS properties. Let's ensure that we've used that. Margin here, width, yes, we've used width. As you can see, we've used width. We've used height. We've used padding margin. We've used color, because that's how we color the text. We use font size. That's how we define the size of the font. We also use font family. That's how you apply new fonts type to your design. We also made use of box shadow, later spacing, border radius, line height, and display, which we apply display block to our image, and we are already having an awesome card here, right? So this is how the card is looking. This is the final product of the card, and this is how you define it. You can go ahead to do the same, follow the video tutorial and do the same. Drop me a comment if I have any difficulty. I will help you out. And also, if you know you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please don't forget to click the like and subscribe button down below so that you get latest information, videos that we'll be posting. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you have any question, drop it down below. I will attend to it. Thank you. See you in the next video.